The Goosebumps TV show is an iconic kids' horror show from the 90s, which a lot of people have a lot of nostalgia and love for. It is iconic without a doubt, and it's known to have its quite wonderful, scary, well-written moments within it that hold up even to this day.
Frog in my throat!
We especially love you. It gets me every time.
And then it's got some moments that, let's just say, haven't aged that properly, like spoiled milk.
You got that wrong.
But overall, I love the show, and I know many other people love the show out there. And a lot of people have had this idea as to what other stories would they have wanted from the Goosebumps IP to be adapted into the old show. Hypothetically, if you had like a season 5 and you were able to rearrange some of the stuff that got adapted, what would you end up picking? So there's been a lot of discussions out there, and I decided that I'm going to throw my hat into the ring. It is your boy, the Horrorlander. What's up, my people and patrons of the night? And today I'm going to be giving you my top 10 Goosebumps books and stories that I would want adapted into the original 90s TV show. Now, just a heads up for my 10 picks, I had basically picked stories up until ones that were published basically up until 1999. And that's because I was going off of the hypothetical that the Goosebumps TV show would run for another season 5. The show ended in 1998. So if it ran another year, I just kind of treated it as that. So my stories are only going to go up until that time period. No modern stuff after that. And another thing is I am going to be considering the budget of the show, so don't expect me to pick really kind of wild and crazy and out there stories because I don't know if they would be adapted the best. And also, these are not necessarily my favorite stories out there. Some are some of my favorite Goosebumps stories, but that's not necessarily what I'm going for. I'm going for ideas that I think would be entertaining and interesting to be adapted into the 90s show back then. So without further ado, I got 10 picks to get through, so let's dive into the 10 Goosebumps stories and books that I would want adapted in the OG TV show.
Viewer beware, you're in for a scare.
Number 10 on my list starts off with I Am Your Evil Twin from Goosebumps Series 2000. I Am Your Evil Twin takes place with the main character Monty, who basically is moving in with his uncle and his cousin while his mom is away on some like jungle trip doing some research. And as he's staying with his uncle and sort of hanging out at this new school that he has to temporarily go to until his mom comes back, he starts experiencing some weird things in his life. He sees at school that there is acts of vandalism and just destruction of property and crazy things happening that he's getting framed for. People are saying that Monty was the one who ended up doing these horrible things and acting out and acting crazy. But the problem is he's not at the scene of the crime every time these things are happening. So he starts to suspect that he might be getting framed for something by somebody who has malicious intent against him. He has a moment at school where he looks out the school window and then sees that there is an individual, a boy, who looks exactly like him. And he realizes that he might have an evil doppelganger that is basically going out and doing a lot of chaotic stuff, getting him into trouble, and has some evil intentions towards him. And as he starts to try to chase down this perpetrator and kind of clear his name, you find out that there might be some more threats out there. And might not just be one clone, it might be several that he has to deal with. This is a really good Goosebumps story. I enjoy this one quite a bit, and I think that it would be very fun to see the idea of clones in the 90s Goosebumps show, kind of seeing this whole who framed who kind of identity crisis thing. There's also some good emotional moments and character moments in this story, and I know a lot of people involving the Goosebumps IP are sort of hit or miss with the whole "you gotta believe me" trope, but in this book, the "you gotta believe me" trope is actually well woven into the story because, again, Monty has to rely on certain people to make decisions and have faith in him in order to save his life against these threats. So this is the trope actually done pretty well, and I think that this would be a fun story to see adapted, so that's my number 10 pick. Number 9 on my adaptation pick would actually be a Give Yourself Goosebumps book. It's not the only one on my list. There's another one after this, but this one would be Under the Magician's Spell. Now, there is already a magician-based story adapted in the show, Bad Hair Day, and that episode was...
I'm home.
Don't worry, Tim. I'll think of something. I'll get us out of this.
What? And quit show business?
Ugh. Brother, ugh. What's that? What's that, brother?
Yeah, it's straight up bunny shit, man. I mean, it is straight up tricks are for kids. No, tricks is on me for watching this piece of doo-doo garbaggio. The trick was 9 months of unpaid bills after I watched this atrocity. I hate this episode. It sucks. I cannot stand it. The music with the mezzo, just the goofy plotline and pacing. All about this episode. I just cannot stand it. So I actually want a good magic-based episode. Under the Magician's Spell is a Give Yourself Goosebumps book, so this one would have to be certain storylines and things adapted by the creators. They would sort of have to cherry pick what they kind of want to do. This Give Yourself Goosebumps book is basically about a kid and his friend and his younger sister going to a mall, and they run into this magic shop with this magician guy who claims to be powerful and claims to be an actual sort of sorcerer and magic wielder, and of course they don't believe him. That is until he basically transports them into a pocket dimension full of a lot of different magic type of characters and gimmicks that risk their life, that endanger them being killed, and there's a lot of cool stuff in this story. One of the cool things is that the magician actually has a sort of like wardrobe case where he hides kids' severed heads inside of there. Now, you cannot adapt that because that's way too gruesome, but you could have shrunken heads inside of that wardrobe case and basically say that, yeah, this is what I used to do to the old kids who doubted me and tried to defy me. You also have a scene of you basically getting tied up to this sort of spinning wheel in front of an audience, and a knife thrower professional is launching knives at you, and it is quite hair-raising. You also have some fun card game stuff, some fun magic trick stuff, so I think that storyline about the pocket dimension being adapted would be fun, and this would be overall just a really fun story to see adapted. Again, some good magician-based stuff, and the gimmicks are actually well done in that book, so I think if you take some things from it and try to kind of adjust them for the budget, this would be a good book to see adapted. Number 8 on my list is from Goosebumps Series 2000 again. This one is Fright Camp. Fright Camp is a story about some kids who basically are going to a summer camp that is based on a horror movie director with very famous movies that are loved by everybody. This guy basically makes a sort of old school B movies, things like, Attack of the Vampire Leeches and I Used to Be a Teenage Frankenstein, things like that the kids are super fond of. They love these movies, and everybody going there is a giant super nerd and fan about these movies. And here at the camp, basically, it's going to be themed around his various different movies, and it's hinted that he might be trying to shoot some scenes for a brand new movie idea that he's coming up with, so the kids get to be a part of it. So it's sort of like a kind of theme park attraction mixed in with a camp that's sort of meta. It's sort of playing on the nod of horror fans and people who are fans of certain horror creators, such as us for Goosebumps. I would actually say that I would want this episode adapted as a series finale to the OG show because I think Fright Camp would be interesting. Yeah, you could do like a horror movie director, but I think it would be pretty fun to go full meta with it and have RL Stine as the focus of this camp. You can have RL Stine as the famous author, maybe a movie producer, maybe a TV show producer, because you already see throughout the Goosebumps show that there is a bit of a meta where sometimes on the screen of like living rooms and TVs, I think maybe in Bride of the Living Dummy, they were watching the episode Werewolf of Fever Swamp. So sometimes episodes or maybe that was Scarecrow Walks at Midnight, I forget, but sometimes Goosebumps episodes are shown on the TV in actual episodes from the show. So
Are you getting scared? No, but I think I'm gonna be sick.
there is sort of a bit of meta there. So you could play off of that meta. You could act like the Goosebumps episodes being adapted are like big movies that are dropping, or maybe just the TV show is very popping, and now everybody is going there as a Goosebumps fan to this camp. You could bring back a bunch of iconic monsters from the show. You could have Slappy. You could have the werewolf from Fever Swamp. You could have Count Nightwing. You could have the swamp monster from How to Kill. You could have the masked mutant. You could have a bunch of different monsters basically come and feature in this camp. And then the kids are basically getting terrorized by all these various attractions, thinking that it's fake, but then actually finding out maybe some of this might be more real than we might expect, and our lives are in danger. So that is my number 8 pick for the series finale, a more meta take episode that I think would be very fun to conclude the series. Number 7 is actually a short story from the second Tales to Give You Goosebumps book, which was camp themed, and this one is The Werewolf's First Night. Werewolf's First Night is about a boy who goes to a summer camp that, what do you know, he finds out that a lot of the kids there may actually be werewolves, and he gets trapped and isolated there, away from parents, away from help, and he has to deal with this ominous threat of everybody around him possibly being monsters. I think this would be fun. There's a lot of fake outs in the short story. This is a short story, so you'd have to take some creative liberty and sort of expand on it. But I think this one would be very cool to see adapted in the Goosebumps show, and definitely lean into everybody being a werewolf there. You combine some cool stuff on werewolf action, and a lot of the werewolf action in the show turns out to be pretty good. I mean, we know Werewolf of Fever Swamp's episode is fantastic. We know people are scared of Saber, even though he was sort of a weird type of werewolf thing creature. And obviously the werewolf skin, although that's not as good as Fever Swamp, I still think it's somewhat of an enjoyable episode. So it'd be cool mixing a summer camp with a bunch of werewolf kids, and maybe you could even do werewolf adults. You have the theme of isolation, being trapped out there with a bunch of cool creature feature stuff. Yeah, this would be a fun one to see adapted. Number 6 on my list is also from another Tales to Give You Goosebumps book, but this one is number 6 in the series, the Christmas themed book, and this would be A Holly Jolly Holiday. A Holly Jolly Holiday is about this family who basically gets this VHS tape and they play it, and it's basically this sort of kind of typical sort of I don't know how you could say, like old school Hallmark kind of movie called Susie Snowflake. Imagine Susie Snowflake like the main character or the main actress from Wizard of Oz. That sort of very preppy and happy and sort of whimsical type of character. And as her family's watching this VHS tape, the protagonist sees that they start becoming obsessed with the VHS tape. They actually start dressing like Susie Snowflake. And then what do you know? They start turning into Susie Snowflake and trying to transform her as well in this weird sort of cult alien type of way. This feels very much like Twilight Zone, which of course RL Stine was basically inspired off of to a degree. So I think this would be a fun one. It would be sort of a reality warp kind of freaky episode. You're mixing in the very whimsical and cute imagery of Susie Snowflake, this Hallmark, very preppy, Dorothy kind of character. But then you have that very creepy, ominous aspect of your family getting taken over, reality warping around you. And it is freaky. It is weird. It is well written, and I definitely would want to see it adapted. So that is my pick for that. Number 5 on my list is a second Give Yourself Goosebumps book. It's the last one on my list, and this is Welcome to the Wicked Wax Museum. This is one of the darkest Goosebumps books I've ever read, but the storyline that I want to see adapted in the show is not the darker storyline. It's the more fun one, and that is the storyline within the book where you are basically trapped in a section of the Wicked Wax Museum where you're surrounded by a bunch of different wax figures that are all universal monsters. Yes, I'm talking Dracula, Mummy, Frankenstein, Wolfman, Creature from the Black Lagoon, and other types of creatures. You're basically surrounded by a bunch of different monsters, cryptids, and universal monsters as well. And you realize that as you turn your back to these creatures and walk away from them, they are inching their way and moving closer to you until it gets to the point where they're just flat out trying to chase you, kill you, and eat you. So this would be a very fun sort of storyline to see get adapted because obviously RL Stine was inspired by Universal Monsters. Seeing the Universal Monster homages within this episode would be very cool and fun. And there's actually a part of this storyline where you run into a meta Goosebumps monster, the Lord High Executioner from A Night in Terror Tower. You essentially know about the Goosebumps books, you know it's something that exists, so you could take on the meta aspect where the kid in this episode knows about A Night in Terror Tower's episode. He's seen the Lord High Executioner, and obviously the wax figure of the Executioner comes to life. And there's even a scene where he tries to take a candle in the book and sort of melt the wax figure, and the wax basically melts off, and you see that there is scarred human skin of an arm underneath the wax, and you realize that the actual Lord High Executioner is trapped inside of the wax. So it'd be pretty kind of cool to see if you had some like meta time travel thing. Maybe the Executioner got stuck in this wax museum, the villain basically transformed and encased them, so now you're trapped with all these Universal monsters, creatures, and a meta Goosebumps villain trying to escape with your friends out of this wax museum. Again, a very fun one to watch, and it would be kind of thrilling and scary, so I think this one would be cool to see adapted just for that storyline. Number 4 on my list is The Curse of the Mummy's Tomb. Now, of course, there is the return of the mummy in the show, but The Curse of the Mummy's Tomb was the book that came before that, and the reason why I picked this is the second half of the book. The second half of the book is super intense, super scary. Ahmed is one of the most darkest and coolest human villains in Goosebumps. One of the best villains, period, and he is a human. You see him really trying to kind of like kill the kids, kidnap the kids, threaten you, and there's a very cool sort of Indiana Jones trapped inside of a chamber scene where, you know, Uncle Ben, Sari, and Gabe's lives are being risked. They potentially might be sent through a mummification process by Ahmed, and an artifact finds a way to basically get some revenge and take care of business. This one might be similar already to the Mummy episodes that already exist, but again, I think the story is great. I love that second half, so I'd want to see it adapted just for giving Ahmed the glory that he deserves. Now we're in our top 3, and number 3 on my pick is from Series 2000. It is Creature Teacher. I've always said that the book Creature Teacher is kind of like the real mascot of Goosebumps. It embodies what Goosebumps is with how well written it is, the body horror, the gross out, some of the scary and thrilling scenes, the creative plot, the intense plot, the cool monster focused villain, very iconic with Mrs. Marg, and it's got some good comedy in there and a very charming main character who's more comedic and witty focused. So overall, this book is fantastic. Not much I can say else on it. I think it would be fun to see it adapted in the show, and seeing the prosthetic effects they did with Mr. Mortman from Girl Who Cried Monsters episode, I think they could do Mrs. Marg justice, and it involves a boarding school with isolated kids being trapped in a wicked, weird talent show to survive from getting eaten. So that is my pick for number 3. Number 2 is The Haunted School from the OG 62. This one I actually really want to see adapted because I think they can do it. You just need a gray filter. You just need some kids coughing out black gunk, acting in a cult-like fashion. Maybe you can make Mr. Chameleon a bigger focus. It involves a school setting, so it can be done that way, and a suburb, which is easy. And again, the visual effects can be done. Some of the practical effects can be done as well. And even Are You Afraid of the Dark had their own sort of episode, The Tale of the Photo Finish, which was kind of like a mock Haunted School. So I definitely think that The Haunted School is a fantastic book. Amazing. It has a cult following. Very dark, very creepy, very scary. Nothing too overly gory or out there, but it is definitely a wickedly dark one. So it'd be fun to see this one adapted. That's my number 2 pick. And finally, number 1 is actually one of my favorite Goosebumps books of all time, but the reason why I think this should be adapted is not only is it well written, it's a coming of age story with a very charismatic and fantastic protagonist, just like Carly Betts' level of tier, and this one is all human based. There is no supernatural monster aspect in this story. Everything is grounded within reality, and I think that'd be very cool and very refreshing to see adapted. That one is from Series 2000, Are You Terrified Yet? This story is absolutely wonderful. It is dark, it is creepy, it is kind of gruesome even with the fake outs. It's about this kid named Craig who basically is moving to a new school and sort of kind of like neighborhood area. And he's a scaredy cat. He's a complete baby, but he's trying to act like a brave guy. And some things happen that make him look brave, but kids around the school basically start catching whiff of him being a fraud and try testing his gangsta in a way by putting him through a bunch of creepy and disgusting dares, like putting his hands in a jar full of spiders, going to a morgue to kind of hug dead corpses and maybe get chased by some terrifying things, and risk his life and risk his safety and risk his sanity just so he can prove he's brave. And it's a coming of age story, so you see him evolve throughout the book. Craig is a fantastic character. He's very well written, again on the tier of people like Carly Beth. You get a good kid actor for him and he's going to nail the role. He can do a fantastic job, and this is a great story. Again, it's all grounded in reality. There is no supernatural aspect. It can be done with practical effects, and make this into a two-parter. I definitely think that this should be a two-parter because of how well written of a story it is. And yeah, man, Are You Terrified Yet? A 10 out of 10 story. It can definitely be adapted in the show for the budget, and I think it'd be one remembered by a lot of people, watched by a lot of people. And although it's not openly a sort of a Halloween focused story, there's so much creepy and scary stuff in here that this one would be watched all over again on Halloween by people for many years to come, just like you would do for stuff like The Haunted Mask. So yeah, those are the 10 Goosebumps books and stories that I would want to be adapted into the 90s show. Let me know what you think about my list. Any thoughts or comments? Maybe just leave something nice to put a smile on your boy's face. You want to see these pretty dimples, don't you? And let me know down below, what books or stories would you want to see adapted into the OG 90s show? And that's all I got for today. If you want to see more content like this in the future, free way to support me and show love is to hit that subscribe button, hit that like button, and again, comment down below. And that's all I got for today. Have a blessed day. Stay cool, stay classy, stay goosebumping, and I'm out of here. Deuces.
Arrivederci.